and streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980, where if you're watching right now, you can see Anthony, the magical spreadsheet has appeared. Aw, yeah. It is roster construction time. I will tell you, if you are not watching right now, but you're in a place where you can, whether it is with your phone, your tablet, or you're listening as you walk around your house, listening on the free Odyssey app. Perhaps you've told Alexa, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980, something you can do as well. Go over to your smart TV, open the YouTube app, and you can follow along there, and you can see the spreadsheet that I have in front of me right now as we construct the 53. We're going to do offense now, defense at the bottom of the hour. And this is the first roster projection that I've seen that's going to be able to factor in Braeden Daniels being out for the season. If you're just joining us or you haven't heard the news, the Commanders' fourth-round rookie tackle has a torn rotator cuff, and the Commanders, amongst a first wave of cuts that included bottom-of-the-roster players we all expected to get cut, was put on IR. He is out for the year. This is injured reserve before the season, which means you cannot come back. There will probably be a player or two that will mention that will get put on short-term IR, maybe even as soon as tomorrow, likely on Wednesday, that allows you to bring back then someone else. So we'll talk through it all. Anthony, are you ready to go?
I am indeed, Craig.
All right, so what you're looking at now, the list that's in front of you if you're watching, is the list is just a literal copy and paste of the list that we did a little less than a week ago. Or on August 22nd, we did a roster projection after the Baltimore game. So we will now adjust based off that. And I guess my tabs are hidden on the stream, but if you saw, or if you could see them, you'd see the 828 Take Command one that we did this morning. So also recommend listening to that if you want Logan and I's thoughts. So we had two quarterbacks, Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett. I don't think we need to change anything there. I do think Jake Fromm deserves a shout-out. Like, good job, Jake. You played well. You at least gave us something to think about. But at the end of the day, you need this roster spot way more than a third quarterback, and I think there are enough Jake Fromms around the league that you can get him through to practice squad.
You don't want Jake Fromm as your QB2 is what you're telling me.
Are you trying? You are trying to.
I just asked a simple question. A simple question, Craig. That's all.
No.
For the Jake Fromm supporters out there, you seriously don't want to consider him for your QB2 because he's had a phenomenal preseason.
No, I don't.
Okay.
He hasn't been better than Jacoby Brissett.
That's all I need. This preseason?
Yes.
His numbers are pretty good, Craig.
His numbers are good.
I'm not saying
you want to adjust him for who he's playing against.
I'm not saying I would rather have I'm not saying I would rather have Jake over Jacoby, but I'm saying from a numbers wise, I think Fromm's. He's also played more though too, Craig.
He's played way more.
Yeah.
And he's played against. If Jacoby Brissett and Jake Fromm switched places, Jacoby Brissett would look like a Hall of Famer.
You might be right.
Because here's the thing: this team is deep. And let's scope out a second to give a bravo to the Commanders. This is actually an important point, right?
Yeah.
Bravo to the Commanders player personnel department. They did a pretty good job at some pretty important positions to make your third quarterback look good. And oh, by the way, that Bieniemy guy's also very good. Their third offensive line has played well and played better in games than they have in practice. The receivers, like Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, these dudes can play. Chris Rodriguez is your running back for part of this. Derek Gore and Jarrett Patterson and Jonathan Williams, these dudes are NFL caliber players. You had what would be a bad NFL offense, but a borderline NFL offense in a lot of places. Nolan Laufenberg and Stromberg's playing center for you for part of this. And we talked about Montero playing well along the threes with the offensive line. They got some good players that are going against other teams that are not this deep. So third string versus third string, amazing. Jake Fromm, insulated, looks good, did the job. You put Jacoby Brissett out there, woo! That would not be fair. He had 48 career starts in top 15 in the NFL in real NFL games against real NFL talent last year in Cleveland. Yeah, I'm good.
I didn't mean to get you fired up. I was just asking a question for those that did pose the question, and never read the comments. Just saying.
I'm sure we'll do it again on Wednesday. And
We probably will.
And I'm just going to get just as fired up again. All right, running back. Robinson, Gibson, Rodriguez. All due respect to Jared Patterson, who was released today. Really good job. Good back. He's gotten better every year, but not at the level of those three. Same for Jonathan Williams, a guy who's 7 years into the league, has had some nice games in actual NFL action. Probably should have been used more last year, especially after J.D. McKissick went down. But at the end of the day, like Rodriguez has been maybe their best preseason player. I think he leads the NFL in preseason rushing.
He's going crazy.
He's phenomenal. And so I'm excited to see. I think like he's earned himself regular season carries. I just don't think there's a reason to carry a fourth. But I think practice squad wise, you use one of your veteran practice squad spots on Williams if you can, because you trust him to step in if you need him, and he's played teams for you in the past. And then you get to Alex Arma, who I think is interesting. Before we get to Arma, any agreement or any disagreement on the backs?
I love the backs.
Okay, all set there. Going with 3, not 4. Arma's a guy that if you need a roster spot, you cut. Because he's a fullback, and you tell him, we're going to sign you again on Thursday, don't go anywhere. We're going to pay you your money. You will not miss a thing. You did not miss a game check. We just need to be able to not have someone get exposed to waivers that other teams are going to sign because we value you as a fullback and no one else in the league does. Sorry, you're the guy. We need to be able to sign Big Phil or keep Big Phil and then put him on IR, or someone else, maybe a similar situation that is short-term injured, but you don't want to put on season-ending IR. Arma would be the candidate to do that with. But I don't think they need the spot. I don't think they want to mess around with it. So you just go ahead and keep him on the 53.
Yeah, I think you keep him.
Okay.
Got to.
That gets us to receiver.
Uh-oh.
We probably should have spent less time yelling about Jake Fromm and more time on receiver.
That's why I apologized earlier about getting you fired up.
Look at you producing the show. All right. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, Brown.
4. Yep.
Those 4 locked in. Got it. Easy.
Let's get it.
I still think Byron Pringle is locked in as the 5th.
Yes, he is.
He has had a quieter second half of camp, but he just does the right stuff and he plays special teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's valuable there.
Yep.
We had Kaz Allen. You had talked me into Kaz Allen over Dax Milne. That's not happening.
I know. It pains me to see him go.
The thing is, he shouldn't go anywhere. He should just be inactive. Or not inactive. He should just be on practice squad until he learns how to reliably catch punts. And I think by week 6 or week 7, like back half of the season, week 10, you could see Kaz Allen. But here's the thing. Because he had such a poor performance the other night, it actually makes it easier to get him into practice squad.
Yep.
Where a guy like Milne, I think you're going to have a hard time getting him to practice squad because he's played in the league. And again, Allen, any team could have had Kaz Allen in the draft. Yep. They all passed 7 to whatever number of times of draft picks they had, right? It's just that's a reality. And so, while yes, he's explosive, there's a lot of twitchy athletes that are unpolished and need a lot of work in a lot of camps across the NFL. These are some of the world's best athletes. And so I think getting Kaz Allen to practice squad is going to be pretty easy. And then you have the question of, is it Dax Milne or Mitchell Tinsley or Bryson Tremaine? That gets funky. But I think Milne is the most experienced and he gives you the most on special teams, especially because he's a starter on teams. He's your punt returner. So I actually think while you can make an argument that Mitchell Tinsley may be a little bit more exciting as a receiver and has a similar skill set to Milne and obviously was more productive than Milne in the preseason, and Tremaine gives you something that you don't even have anywhere else with that 6'4" big frame, and he scored a touchdown, I think the special teams just is overwhelmingly pushes things in Dax Milne's direction.
I agree. I think special teams is a spot we're missing right now. It was going to come down to Dax. It was going to come down to Kaz, and that's how I've pretty much like based this last receiver spot on, like who's going to be the teamer, and it's going to have to end up being Dax again because he is reliable, as a catcher back there. But then also as you always allude to, he can play literally every position on the field.
Yep.
Maybe not as dynamic as everybody else, but, he's still a viable option.
Right. And, a guy that can line up in the slot and do some things is not like Terry, Jahan, and Curtis can all line up inside. And Diami's lined up more inside, but a guy who can kind of do the quick, twitchy, shifty inside slot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Milne definitely gives you a different option there than a guy like Tremaine. Tinsley can do that stuff too, but he's a 0 on special teams.
Yeah.
All right. Thomas, Bates, Turner, tight end, done and done.
Yep.
No arguments. Braeden Dillon, by the way, great game.
I was about to say, he looked pretty good.
Really, really impressive. But I don't think that you need to mess around with that. Then you get to the O-line. And now we got something to talk about because Braeden Daniels is gone.
And how many numbers?
So we had 10. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in Tyler Larson, which I would have done
him
anyway. Because some of this is projection and like what we would do. Some of this is like feeling out the reporting, and everybody's got him on the team. Ron has been so burned by center the last couple of years. They want to carry 3 centers just in case. And so I get it. I'm not going to argue with that. And with Daniels no longer a part of the equation, I think that actually becomes a little easier. So I would go Leno, Charles, Gates, Cosme, Wiley, your starters, Paul, Lucas, your 2 primary backups, Stromberg, Larson, and I think the next guy up is Trent Scott. And with Daniels gone, you want a 4th tackle. That's the position. So now you're down to Scott, the kid's
Lucas.
62. Well, Lucas is already on.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Akimbuale, something like that.
Yeah, AK something.
Yeah, and apologies to him. Like, he hasn't really flashed that much in camp, and all of a sudden he's playing with the 2s the other day, and I was like, whoa, where did he come from? But I think Trent Scott, who, by the way, they played not just at right tackle, but at left tackle in the game, and he was okay. He gave up a couple pressures. I think Trent Scott's the next guy up.
So it surprised me a little bit that you kept Larson, but the injury to Braeden Daniels does make sense for keeping him. I just wasn't that impressed with him in the last preseason game. But
he's a pro who's done it, man.
Yeah.
Like there's no, and it's Alex Akembulu. So apologies to him on not knowing the name immediately. But yeah, man, like Larson's been there, done that, played in games, been good. He's had a great camp.
Yeah,
I think he was fine in the game. Like, is what it is. But I think like Jared Jones-Smith at guard, who's got a little tackle flex, like he's interesting. Obviously Mason Brooks, Nolan Laufenberg has been very, very good in camp, and he's a large man who can play some center, can play some guard. But at the end of the day, I think you need another tackle, and I just think Trent Scott's the obvious next guy up.
Yeah.
All right, so that leaves us with 25 on offense. That means we got 25 on defense plus the 3 specialists. And so with the Braeden Daniels news, all we've done is wind up moving our O-line around. But does it affect anything on defense? And did the final game affect anything on defense? Find out next when we continue our roster projection here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Continuing now with our 53-player roster projection. We're done with the offense. Let's get to the defense, Anthony. This is the most juiced position on the team, but I actually don't think this is that hard. Defensive line, I think they keep 11. They go 1 short at linebacker, and it's really not that big of a deal. I think Chase Young, John Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat, obvious. And then I think James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill, and F.A. Obata are obvious. I think Phil Mathis is obvious, although you might wind up IRing him, and then you can play around if you want to bring back a 5th linebacker, for instance, for special teams purposes. And then the 2 draft picks, KJ Henry, Andre Jones Jr., they're on. Jones did slow a little bit in the last week of camp, a little less consistent, and Henry, I thought, got better. But you keep both of them, they're draft picks. They both got upside. You took them for a reason, and you're at a position where all those other guys that I mentioned, every single defensive end above them on the depth chart is in a contract year. So you're obviously not going to bring all of them back because they're going to be too expensive. It's not just all in a contract year, but all of them but Obata are coming off their rookie deals. And then John Ridgeway is the 11th guy. I think he was good enough for you last year that even though he wasn't quite as good maybe as an Abdullah Anderson this preseason, he's working his way back from injury. He had a torn pec late in the year. He's had a bit of a back thing that he's been working through. And he's shown enough progress to say it's worth the continuity for the 5th-round pick that the Cowboys cut last year at this time and wound up being an enormous player for Washington on the field last season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. And keeping all 11 of these guys, it's going to just be tough to get all of them on the field, though.
So that's where
That's the
what
problem.
they did, well, a couple things. One, they're going to rotate Obata and Smith-Williams, and I believe Chase in on 3rd downs as pass rushers. So you're going to be able to play Allen and Payne as much as possible on 1st and 2nd down. And while those guys are obviously tremendous pass rushers, if you want to find a place to give one of them a blow, not worry about losing anything against the run because it's 3rd down. We're talking about like 3rd and 8 passing situations, 3rd and 8 plus passing situations, maybe even 3rd and 6 plus passing situations. Get a James Smith-Williams who's got a little bit more quickness as a pass rusher, but still a strong bull from the inside. Moves the pocket well. Same thing for F.A. Obata. A little bit, I would say, different rusher than James for sure, but effective and has shown that he can do that in the past. And they messed around with it with Chase as well at that 3 technique. So you can get them on the field that way. It's also a position that rotates a lot. And here's the other part before I get to what was actually going to be my second point in terms of where they get on the field. Do we really think Chase Young's going to play 17 games?
I think so.
This dude got a stinger that Ron seemed to say was going to be 3 to 4 days.
Yeah,
And we are a couple weeks later, and he hasn't been back on the field. We know he wants a new contract. He's going to be super careful, which I'm not begrudging him, but he's going to be super careful. And we know he was super careful with his knee. And again, when he came back, it was clear that, he wasn't himself yet. So that is what it is. But Chase has taken a while to get back from injuries, and he, hasn't been healthy a lot. Most of it's one major knee injury. But I don't know. I thought Ron was super weird about Chase, and not that he's going to get cut or anything.
Yeah.
But if Chase's doctor's appointment went fine on Friday or whenever it was, when Nikki asked him after the game, "How's Chase?" he wouldn't say, "We're not talking about that. We're going to talk about the game." He'd just be like, "It was fine. He should be back, good to go in practice next week." He didn't. It's not what he said.
Yeah.
So I think keeping these guys becomes even more important because they have the experience. And where are they going to get on the field? When Chase Young is off it. And I hope that's not the case. I hope Chase is healthy and balls out. But if you're Rivera and Del Rio and Scanina and Ryan Kerrigan, the defensive line group, you better be prepared.
How much of the Cinco package do you think will be utilized, though? Because you're talking about lining Chase Young up in the 3-tech. You're talking about lining, F.A. up in the 3-tech. If we're going 4-down linemen, I want, Deron, I want John, I want
For sure.
Chase and Montez. But you're talking about lining these people up in the 3-techs and, coming in. So
But you know how much NFL linemen rotate.
I know. But we've also seen times where John has played 90% of the plays. We've seen all these.
And how'd that go at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it is a toll on the body.
It's a
But,
huge toll. And those guys have been hurt when they've done that stuff.
yeah.
So let's not. That's what I would say is of course you want those guys out there, but this ain't Madden. You can't turn injuries and fatigue off. Fatigue is real. And they're going to, hopefully the offense is going to help them. And look, you got plenty of guys that don't play that much.
Yeah.
On a 53-man roster. I'm not concerned. The thing is, it's not like they're taking away from guys elsewhere who would be playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the position you're overloaded at. But here's the other thing. Logan and I talked about this, I think, and he had a great perspective because he had personal experience here. They're so good on teams at the DB spot and so deep there with Holmes, Butler, and Reeves. And I would say the defensive linemen that we're talking about down the roster are better than average defensive linemen on teams. That they're the concern you have about not keeping an extra tight end or an extra linebacker to play teams, it's mitigated with this group. And Logan said in his personal experience, he was a bad special teams player. for certain responsibilities, like punt coverage. Didn't matter because they had such good players elsewhere on the roster. They had two great gunners, and then they had Mike Sellers and Lorenzo Alexander, who were as good as you get as like bigger bodies, and they go down and make 90% of the tackles. And so Logan just had to protect, make sure the punt didn't get blocked, and lollygag down the field. Not lollygag. He was busting his butt because he's Logan Paulson. He played hard. But like run as fast as he could down the field and watch Lorenzo make a tackle, or watch the gunner, Anthony Armstrong or whoever it was, make the tackle. And because Holmes and Reeves and Butler are so sensational, and because James Smith-Williams gets down the field and Tuhill gets down the field, and Andre Jones Jr. is going to get down the field probably faster than those two. KJ Henry's played some teams before. Like, you've got really agile D linemen at the end that are fighting for these spots that are actually as good as linebackers pretty much as special teams players. So there's no real hit on the roster. What would hurt is if you had to cut one of these guys who is not just a borderline NFL player. These guys are F.A., James, and Casey are borderline NFL starters. Cutting them would be stupid. I'm going to be really clear on that. Cutting them, any of the three of them, would be a dumb decision. Don't do that. You do not need to. So the good news is I don't think they're going to, and I don't think they need the roster spot elsewhere. But people shouldn't get freaked out by the 11 D linemen or the fact that, like, yeah, it's going to be hard to rotate all of them every week.
Yeah.
All right, which leads us to linebacker. Pretty straightforward. They already cut Milo Eifler today. Mm-hmm. So you got Jamin, Barton, Mayo, Hudson. I think Dejon Harris is a guy that should get mentioned because if they IR Big Phil and they don't want to bring up Abdullah Anderson as a backup or Benning Patoe, if either one of those guys doesn't get to the practice squad or they don't want to elevate to have that extra depth inside, I think Dejon Harris could be the next man up. I also think that if you really want him for special teams, then you could do the Alex Arma thing. But by the way, Arma also plays teams. So I think it's a little bit cut your nose off to spite your face kind of deal because Arma's more valuable playing fullback than Scooter Harris is to special teams as a fifth linebacker who's not going to see the field on defense. And then this is where, that 11 became really easy because there's no one that really made a case to keep 11 DBs. It's pretty easy to do the DBs. It's Forbes, it's St. Juice, it's Fuller, it's Holmes, it's Danny Johnson at corner, and then Quan Martin is the hybrid player, Derek Forrest, Cam Curl, Percy Butler, and Jeremy Reeves. Like, it's it. That's it. It's simple. It's done. Like, there is no... Rashad Wildgoose did not have a good enough camp. Whiteside was not consistent enough. Jace Whitaker, nice pick the other day, but like that's kind of the first play he's made, or the first big play he's made all of camp, all preseason. So I think there's a couple really, really nice practice squad candidates, including all those guys I just mentioned, Terrell Burgess and others. Smith, the safety, Kendall Smith out of Illinois. But at the end of the day, like if Wildgoose had been as good as he was the first week of camp, and played really well outside as well, and not just in the nickel, then you have a numbers game issue. But you don't. There's 10 DBs that belong on the team for 10 spots, and so you move forward, and there's your 25 on defense.
I like it, man. I'm still a little weary about Danny Johnson. Haven't really heard about the latest on his recovery.
He was moving around on the side fields and stuff last week, so
okay.
I think he's going to be fine.
Okay.
Relatively quickly. And if he's inactive for the first game, like,
who cares?
No big deal.
Yeah.
And then you got Tress, Joey, and Cameron Cheeseman.
That's sure Tress is going to make it?
Wow, you made the same joke as Logan in Take Command.
I know. I was listening earlier.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he actually does pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls. People of all kinds.
Yes.
Yes. Good job, Anthony. Good job. So yeah, that's our 53. I actually don't think this is that hard. It's like,
do you think we're going to be off by 1 or 2 tomorrow? If it's not that hard, we should ace it.
I think this is the list.
Okay.
Like, unless there's another injury or something, I'll say this. I don't think there's any, like, if they wind up doing the Alex Arma Funkarooski for Dejon Harris, or they keep 11 linemen, like, that would be, like, we're off by one, but it wouldn't be surprising. If we're off by more than that, and, like, there's something that we haven't mentioned that happens, I'd be stunned. Stunned.
Okay. So we should not be off by more than one.
Shouldn't be.
All right.
Shouldn't be.
I'm looking forward to it, Craig.
Guess we'll find out. 4 o'clock tomorrow, start of the show. We got to know by then. We'll see if we know beforehand. I think we probably will. Keep your eye on your favorite beat reporter's Twitter feed all day. That's how that goes. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.